Today I have a heading, Food Without Seed. Now, lately I've been really looking a lot at what God talks about when it comes to fruits and food, and you're going to see, we're going to have a look at Proverbs as we get into it. But right in the beginning, when God created everything and He decided what was man to eat, He said the plants with seed and fruit with seed would be what man was He created. I would like you to go with me. I'm going to take you on the journey. So let's go to Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to look at God's instruction there. So I want you to see that God has just created everything, and I want you to start with me from verse 5. Now, no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up. For the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. The picture that is painted there is that there wasn't anything growing yet. Nothing. Then it says God created man. And He goes on to explain to him, and I want to take you to that part where He's speaking to them, and He says to them, look at from verse 15 on. The Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. Then He says, and the Lord commanded the man, you're free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. And that is the restraint that God puts on first of all, to one particular tree. All the other trees, He made them so that they would be seed-bearing. I want you to notice that. And that plants were seed-bearing. The objective of having a seed in a fruit is that you are looking at a future product. But my sermon title today is Food Without Seed. So I want you just to recognize, first of all, that God has given to man, first of all, the instruction that we are to eat, and what we are to eat are fruits that have seed and plants that have seed. You might wonder why this is so important, but nowadays you can actually get oranges with no pips. You can actually get certain fruits that doesn't have the seed in it anymore. And as a result of that, there is no future harvest, no future product. And yet God has a time period where He wants you to know that you need to eat food that has no seed in it. So you have food that is seed, but that is what you can do. It's food that you can go and reach out. So go with me to Proverbs again, and I want you to notice certain things there. It's very interesting that when you start looking at this, that God, in a beautiful way, really builds on this concept of fruit and seed. In Proverbs chapter 18, if you really have to go and look at all of that, it's actually talking about this very principle that everything has a seed in it. So let's look at verse 20. From the fruit, we're talking about fruit again, of their mouth, a person's stomach is full. With the harvest of their lips, again, from something that they are saying, they are satisfied. Then it says in verse 21, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Now, when I look at this, and we're looking at fruits now, I want you to imagine for a moment that I give you a fruit. What is the first, or let me first ask this question. When will you give somebody something to eat? If a person's coming to you and they need your help to change a spare tire, would you give them something to eat? When would you give them something to eat? When they're hungry. When they actually say, I'm hungry. The first thing that you will do is give them something to eat. So what will they do? Let's imagine now, there's a person, they're hungry, you're giving them something to eat, and you give them an apple. What are they going to do with the apple? They're going to eat it, isn't that true? Will they be mindful if it's got seeds or not? Why won't they worry about if it's got seeds or not? Because all they are thinking of at the moment is, I want to satisfy my hunger. Now, many times, you can see how I'm taking on this, we go to God and we have a hunger, we have a need. And we will ask Him for money. Lord, I need money, I need to pay my rent or whatever. And God, in His great kindness, gives you money, and you find to your surprise a little bit more than you need than just to pay your rent. What would you do with that money if you were just a person who's worried about eating? You'll just eat it all up. You'll use every cent that you have because you're basically trying to satisfy a need. But if you recognize that in the fruit, God hasn't just given you the flesh of the fruit, He's also giving you the seed. How many of you consider the seed? You see the fruit, and you immediately, because the fruit satisfies the flesh of the fruit, you're happy. How many of you have eaten watermelon? When you eat watermelon, what do you have to do a lot of times when you're eating the watermelon? You have to spit out the pips. Well, there are some that swallow the pips, but I'm not one of those. I really struggle to swallow a pip. So I become very conscious of the seed in a fruit. If I eat a grenadella, like every little piece of that grenadella is a seed inside. I have to crush every single one of them before I swallow. I cannot eat a grenadella without concentrating on the seed. Now you might think, what am I saying to you? I think we need to become conscious of the fact that there are certain things that God does for us, and in what He does for us, He plants a seed. I told you the story before. There was a farmer. They were very poor. Time came for them to eat. His daughter and his children were sitting around the table, but there was nothing on the table. And the man prayed, Lord, please, give us our daily bread. But when they opened their eyes, still nothing on the table. And the children went to sleep hungry. The mother was upset. The father was in turmoil. He walks out, pleading with God. Please give us our food. All of a sudden his daughter comes running up to him and says, Daddy, God has answered our prayer. And he says, how? What did He do? And she grabs her daddy's hand, drags him off into the barn, and there against the wall are all these bags filled with seeds. Mealy seeds. And she says, Daddy, look, God has answered our prayer. There is food for us to eat. But the father looks at that and he recognizes that they can't eat that. Why can't they eat the seed? Because that's the future harvest. Now, sometimes we have to take what God has given us and not just live in the moment, but to recognize that sometimes we're going to have to deny ourselves in order to receive something in the future. And the father sends the child away saying, no, you can't eat this. He reaches up to the bag, takes the bag, he walks out into the field, and as he's walking out in the field, he puts his hand in the bag, and he throws the seeds out, and they fall on the ground wherever they fall. And he's crying as he does that, because he realizes that he could feed his child now. But then what would he do for his children in that time? God recognizes that. God understands that we need to eat. And most of the times when you look at any fruit, there is sufficient flesh in the fruit to satisfy your need for that moment. But don't disregard the seed. What you sow, you're going to reap. And that is what Solomon is saying here. Solomon is saying that you have the power. That every word that you speak has a harvest time. If you want to be sure of a good harvest, what must you sow? Good seeds. You have to do that. And your words will allow you to be satisfied, as it says, a person's stomach to be full. And it has the ability that when you have a harvest. So I want you to notice two things happen here. So I want you to look at Proverbs 20 again. From the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is full. That is the flesh part of the fruit. You can immediately, from doing something, receive satisfaction for that. But then you must understand that the pip, if you consider the pip, with a harvest of their lips, that means what you have spoken, they will also be satisfied. You can't only think of the moment. So let me just show you an example. Adam and Eve. Here's Eve standing at the tree. She's interested in the fruit of the tree, but she doesn't bear in mind that the seed of that tree is going to have a consequence. What the devil tells her is, you're going to become like God. What God told him about that fruit is that he will surely die. What you decide to take and eat is going to have an incredible effect on your well-being. In the lesson study, we spoke about the Word of God. Jesus himself talks about the fact that he is the Word. Now I want you to come to this part, and I'd like you to go with me to Exodus chapter 16 now. So up to now we've been talking about fruit that has a seed. But now I want you to look at something that we need to recognize. It is explained in Exodus chapter 16. Now most of you who know the Bible will know straight away that is when the people ask for something to eat. Okay, now remember, what did God give them? Fruit with seed. Okay, that is what they were to eat. But all of a sudden we find the situation that the Israelites have ended up, and it's a 15-day journey, it's in the second month, they've come out of Egypt. It says in verse 2, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and in some sense cried out to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. So what is the impression given here? They haven't got anything to eat. So what is the first thing that you should think when people are hungry? Give them something to eat. But yeah, friends, that's where we stop most of the time. Let me explain. God calls Moses, he says to them, listen, and I want you to look at verse 4. God said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Now, here we have food coming again. Food in the picture. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. Okay, now, what did the people do when they left Egypt? You remember they were fleeing. What was one of the most interesting comments that Moses makes about the people as they flee? Remember, they got possessions of the the people were liberal in giving their possessions and their wealth to the Israelites. Just get out of there, you're killing us. If you can't understand us, we will. But what did they also do, which is so interesting? They carried off dough without yeast. Now I was wondering to myself, why did they carry off some dough? They were making sure they had food for the children. Is that true? Now that's what we do. But what happened to that food? When we look at this story, it ran out. Sooner or later there was nothing. And they were now considering that they're in the desert to die. Now, I want you to try and make this personal, make it more real to you. How many of you have found yourself in a place where you are desperately in need of food? Now, food can be anything. I don't care what it is. Most times people talk about their desperate need of money. Does God hear your request? He makes a promise that He'll give to you your daily bread. He makes a promise. Have any of you experienced that? Does He give you your daily bread? Okay, does He give you your monthly bread? Does He give you your yearly bread? Or does He give you your daily bread? See, you're all very quiet. I want you to look at chapter 16 again. God says to them, I'm going to pour down. Now, first of all, who's doing it? God. It's God doing it. It's not you doing it. It's God doing it. You've heard about the God complex, huh?
Yes.
What's it mean to have a God complex?
You think you're God.
Where you think you're God, huh? And I give it, I want to tell you this times when you must know that you're not God. You can't walk on water. You can't take 5 loaves and 2 fishes and feed the multitude of people. You can't. That yet you have a need. And it says, as we read in Proverbs, your mouth has the ability for life and death. But are you asking correctly? Do you understand what you're asking for? If a man asks for bread, he comes to your home, what is the counsel? And you've got giving. But if you don't have what then? Still giving. You have to be God if you want to give a person if you haven't God. You'll see. Right? And I want you to notice, the reason why I'm addressing this issue is that so many times I find people talking to me about the struggle they have within themselves of doing what God asks them to do. If your brother asks for bread, you must give it. But sometimes we give to the extent that we finally are in want ourselves. That we actually gave when we shouldn't have given. Now remember, it's in your power to either live or die. And if you behave sometimes in giving people feeling that in this way you're helping them, but you are actually depleting your sources, you're not helping them. In actually, in the end, not only are they going to be without food, but so are you going to be. Here's Moses and Aaron. They're accused of taking the people out into the wilderness, saying to them, "You brought us out here to die." God says, hang on, Moses, it's not about you, it's not about Aaron trying to do something, I will do something. And he says, I will pour out food from heaven. But the instruction is clear. What's the instruction? They are to go out to take what they need for the day. And then he says these words, in this way, and I want you just to listen, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. Now, what is so amazing, he then says, on the 6th day, so he's just told them, I'm going to give them their daily bread, They're not allowed to keep anything over for the next day, so that means it's bread without seed. There's no seed in it. You could only eat it now. If you don't eat it now, tomorrow you can't eat it. It's now. And so for 6 days, they do something. Their work is to take, on a daily basis, to go out, collect enough for that day. If they don't eat what they've collected for the day, what automatically happens? It goes rotten, maggots are done. So you can't even put it in the fridge. You can't do. If you take it out more, it's lost. You only get what is sufficient. And God lets you see that for 6 days. But all of a sudden, he says in verse 5, on the 6th day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on other days. So what's the instruction? 6 days, take what you need, eat it today. What's left over, if you haven't eaten it, will become maggots. I said for 6 days. On the 6th day, you go out, you collect, now the instruction is a double portion. Okay? And then he says, so Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord. So he's actually saying, I want you to know it was still God who brought you out, and he's still going to look after you. And but then I want you to notice, so Moses says, verse 8, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening, and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumblings against him. Who are we? You must not grumble against us, but against the Lord. So then he goes on to explain to them, God's going to do this. You can have food for the day, go collect, take it out. The interesting thing is, when you read this, the people listen, but they don't take more than they needed, because they didn't want to go out. They want you to not worry about going out. And what happens to their food? It becomes rotten. So God, in a very clear way, teaches them, you're going to listen to me. But the Bible still says that all of a sudden on the 6th day, what were they to do on the 6th day? Double portion. But they don't go and get a double portion on the 6th day. The Bible tells you that. They only go and take one portion, enough for the day, and the next day, the Bible actually tells me, they went out on the Sabbath day to go and collect, but they found that there was no man. Now, how many years did God do that? Okay, why is he doing that? What's he teaching? What's he teaching? That's great. So I want you to understand something. So many times when we do something, we believe that we are reaping our handiwork. The Bible actually says that some people say that I work with my hands, I provided for the table, but then God said that you don't recognize that I was the one who gave you strength to be able to do that. So you have fruit that has seed, but you also have a food that doesn't have seed. Now we work on a daily basis, taught that by the working of our hands, we earn our bread. But in doing that, we actually forget that God even gives us the bread. Who gave the fruit with seed in the beginning? It was God. But somewhere in the whole thing of earning and doing your thing, you forget God's role in what's happening. And so what I want you to understand here, when I look at the fruit and the seed, I've been drawing people's attention to the fact that you need to take note of the seed. You need to be conscious that it's in your power to determine a future harvest depending on what you do with the seed. Can I just make this a little bit more real when it comes to the church? You receive 100%, whatever that amount is. What does God want of you? What does God want of you? 10%. Okay? And you know I'm talking about time. What will the 10% be in the fruit? What will the 10% be in the fruit? It will be the seed, therefore. It's the seed. What you do with the seeds can determine your harvest. If you look at the book of Malachi, it's very clear. What you do with the seed determines what's going to happen in the future. So there is something that you have to do. But when you reach a stage when it's not about you, so I want to bring it further down. It comes to the plan of salvation. There is something that you can't do for yourself. God has to do. And all you can do, and I want you just to notice the words. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. What is a testing part? How many times do you hear the word test coming up? You think of Christ. He was led into the wilderness to what? Be tested by who? The Bible makes it by God. What did God want to test his son on? Whether he will follow my instructions. Whether he will follow my instructions. When Jesus was tempted to turn the stone into bread, which only God can do, what was Jesus' response? Thou shalt not live by bread alone, but every word, every instruction that comes from the Father's mouth. So what I'm trying to say to you today is, you must learn that there is something where you are responsible. When you have a fruit and there's seed in it, you're responsible to that fruit and to that seed. But there are occasions when you haven't got the power that God has, and you have to only do this, follow every instruction that he says. That is the way you can get out. So I want to use a few examples to bring this home. The man who was at the pool of Bethesda, who was paralyzed. Remember, he's lying there. What happened every now and then with the waters? It was stirred. You remember that? And what happened when it was stirred? The first person to get in would be healed. There would be something. Jesus comes along, he's on this day, it's on the day of the Sabbath too. He looks at this man and he says to the man, hey, you want to be healed? And he says to God, now he's looking at the fruit with the seed, but he's saying to God, I can't get into the water. When the water is stirred, I just can't get in. There's nobody to help me. So what's the problem here with that person? He's depending on either others or himself to be able to get something, to be satisfied. But Jesus turns to him and says to him, okay, hang on. Take up your bed and walk. What was Jesus testing him on? If he would just listen. Not, reason away. If he would just, what did he want? Jesus said, hey, I want to be healed, but by the time I want to be healed, I can't get in. So I'm powerless to do, my friends are powerless to do, I can't do it. And then Jesus says to him, okay, but you take your bed and walk. Immediately, that part is a part where it's not food with seed. That is when it's pure manna. When Jesus came to this world, he said, I am the living bread. The food that your forefathers ate in the wilderness, that was me. And so what I'm trying to bring home to you, dear friends, is this. If you really want to live a life that's in abundance, where you don't have to worry about your daily needs, you need to follow the instructions. Now, I'm going to commend you, those of you sitting here today. You have laboured for 6 days. And you've taken the time on the 7th day to be here. I'm going to ask you, will you be looked after? Yes, you will. Because you followed the instructions. So what I'm trying to say to you, there are times, most of the time the world will tell you, you're responsible to the fruit, you're responsible to your destiny. But I want to tell you this, if you really want to live life, learn to be responsible to God's instructions. If anybody asks you, should I go to church on the Sabbath? You should say yes. Because that is living life. Should I steal? No. The instruction is clear. We need to learn to eat manna. We need to learn to be dependent on God for everything. The last example I want to use is Elisha. I can use other prophets, but I want to use Elisha. What does Elisha do that's so incredible? I mean, there's lots of things. I wonder how many of you noticed. An axe falls into the water one day. Do you remember that story? Now, an axe is made out of solid steel, it sinks down to the bottom. That's the rule. That is like the fruit with the seed, that's just what happens. But they come to Elisha and say, oh, it was one that we had borrowed, sort of on our own. And what does he do? He does the impossible. The axe floats to the surface, they retrieve the axe, and I'm always looking and saying, wow! There's no kind of excitement about it, but a miracle was just performed. We have him coming to a man. Now, I'm just asking you this. Where did Elisha get all his food from? Do you ever read about Elisha working? A man comes to him one day and he says, I've got leprosy. Elisha says to him, go out, dunk yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and you will be healed. What does the man have to do? What's the test? To follow the instructions. When he does do it and he is healed, what's the first thing he says to Elisha? I know that your God is the real God. You'll see where it's not Elisha. But then the man wants to give Elisha money. Do you remember? And Elisha says, no ways. No, I mean, what was Elisha living off? How many of you do something in order to get some mullah? I'll help you, but remember, Elisha said, oh, no. His servant runs afterwards and says, no. He changed his mind. Do you remember? What happens to him? He gets the leprosy. The point that I'm trying to bring home here is, have you come to the place when you've run out of your strength? When a person has been asking you, you've been giving, have you come to the place where you realize it's time to ask God for manna? You understand what I'm saying to you? Or are you still trying to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling? Are you trying to still resolve your own problems the way you can? I want to tell you, dear friends, you need miracles in your life. And what are miracles? It's evidence of God in your life. You need that. And if you find yourself in a place When you've had the fruit and you've looked at the seed and you've done the best you can, at that moment, don't become God. Go on your knees and say to God, I now need your intervention. And what He promises, I will provide. I've experienced this over and over in my life. When I get to a place where I'm at my own wit's end, and it's actually a desperate place. And you think to yourself, if God doesn't do something now, I'm really out of the picture. But you go on your knees and you just say to the Lord, please help me. The most amazing thing is He does. You remember the story of Peter and Christ walking on the water. Jesus comes walking on the water. Why can He walk on the water? Because He is God. He's a miracle person. Can Peter walk on the water? But what does he have? A desire to walk on the water. What does Jesus say to you? If you want, you can. And Peter gets out. And he does the impossible because he's listening to the instruction. But Paul, halfway through walking on the water, he starts looking at what I'm doing. And he starts to sink. And what does he then say? So, I want you to understand that I believe that we as a church have got incredible value in the information we have, even in the writings of Bill and Matt. We have incredible value in the words of God if we will just do it. There's tremendous, but this is fruit with seed in it. But there are the times when you need pure manna. And the only way you will get that pure manna is on a daily basis. You need to take time to sit down and eat the bread from Him. And who's the bread from Him? Jesus. He is the one that does the miracle. He is the one that saves you. We will one day say to Jesus, you are worthy to have all power and honor and glory, for you have saved